In the Wilrijk district of Belgium's biggest city, Antwerp, Moussa Sidi Yahya Dembele was born during the summer of 1987 to a Belgian mother and Malian father. At the age of 16, he made a move to the Pro League side Germinal Beerschot, where he spent a year in the youth categories before debuting in the purple shirt towards the end of the 2003-04 season. After a year as a pro, he transferred to Willem II, a Tilburg-based club in the Dutch Eredivisie, where he picked up almost double the game time and quickly became prolific for the struggling side. The division had taken notice, and Louis van Gaal acted quickly in snatching him up for his AZ Alkmaar side, who had just finished as runners-up to PSV. Under a seasoned vet like Van Gaal, the team was bound to develop and narrow the gap between his current level and the considerable potential. In the north, he did just that. As a mainstay of a team very desperate for a second ever championship, Dembele featured heavily throughout their campaign. Deployed either out wide or in the number 10 role, he was a vital asset going forward. Encouraged by the Dutchman to travel with the ball, he gained the confidence to run directly at defences, who struggled to repress him on his day. 10 goal contributions and solid performances across the months helped AZ push the holders all the way to the final day of the season, but a 3-2 loss to Excelsior left them full of despair in third. A promising year had amounted to nothing, and an even worse season followed, ending up in the table's bottom half, which impelled Van Gaal to depart the rotting club. However, the squad banded together and convinced the gaffer to stay for 2008-09, which, after a rocky start, saw AZ get back on track. With 3 goals to his name inside the opening month, a knee injury ruled out the midfielder until the new year, yet the team withheld the urge to collapse, and by his return after Christmas, Kaskoppen had set themselves up nicely to land the title. Dembele returned to the pitch a new man, determined to get AZ over the line this time. Now in his 20s, he was dictatorial in the centre, confidently cruising through opposition lines and occasionally smashing home some extraordinary efforts. On the last match day, a Belgian brace brought his total to a career high of 10 for the season, as finally, after a 28-year drought, AZ sealed the Dutch Eredivisie. Identified as a league standout, Dembele's versatility on the offense, as well as his defensive capabilities, proved just how complete the youngster had become. That July, they doubled down on the trophies, demolishing Heerenveen 5-1 for the Johan Cruyff Shield. After a decade in the Netherlands, he relocated to the English capital, joining the ranks of Fulham, who edged out Birmingham City in the battle for the Belgian signature. The common challenges that a foreigner faces when adjusting to the Premier League are twofold: pace and physicality, and while the tempo of the game was a challenge, the aggression of English football came quite naturally to him. The Belgian enjoyed going shoulder to shoulder and battling for the ball in the middle of the park, so as soon as he adapted to the quickness, Dembele settled in West London. Needing to up the goal scoring, Mark Hughes liked him in the advanced role, pushing him as high as second striker at times to support and provide for Clint Dempsey and Bobby Zamora. The Europa League runners-up stayed unbeaten in August with 3 draws, but couldn't seal maximum points until Dembele converted both the leveller and 90th minute decider at Craven Cottage versus Wolves.
Dembele fancies it!
Away from the Prem, the Antwerp native claimed a landslide majority in the vote for Fulham's goal of the season, having ripped Spurs to shreds single-handedly and comfortably advancing to the next round of the FA Cup. Clinical in the must-win matches, while plucky against Chelsea at the Bridge and visiting the Etihad, they ended a tumultuous season in 8th place. The Belgian had showcased both his technical class and attitude in his first BPL year, though into his second, Dembele became even more comfortable as Hughes' resignation made way for Martin Jol. The Dutchman brought a familiar approach to the game for Dembele, both tactically and stylistically, deciding to deploy him in a creative central role closer to the middle of the park, freeing him to have a hand in everything. Less concerned with his stats and sensing the manager's trust, he relished the increased time on the ball as a box-to-box midfielder, alongside the skipper Danny Murphy. This was clearly his true calling, and despite the club's poorer finish, it had been a revolutionary year for the Belgian, who Jol tried his utmost to keep a hold of. But in late August of 2012, Tottenham Hotspur triggered his £15 million release clause, bringing him to the Lily-Whites of North London. Agreeing to join Spurs at a time of transition, Mourinho's understudy Andre Villas-Boas was taking over as manager, greeting the Belgian amongst a stacked transfer window in which they splashed over £50 million, declaring their keenness to compete. Funded mostly by the sales of Luka Modric and Rafael van der Vaart, Dembele was viewed as a replacement for the Croatian, who now at Madrid left big boots to fill. Punting a vicious grass cutter past Norwich on his debut, White Hart Lane was reminded of his quality, and as the weeks went by, he assured the fans that it wasn't beginner's luck. Sharing the line mostly with Scott Parker and Sandro, he brought a needed level of assertiveness, relaxing everyone when in possession and helping initiate counterattacks. Those initial 2 years at Spurs were good, featuring in over 40 games per season, including Europa League minutes, creating some excellent memories for the supporters and becoming a fan favourite. Still, he was lacking an identity, which came soon after the summer of 2014 and the arrival of Mauricio Pochettino. The Argentine's Southampton success convinced Daniel Levy to appoint him as the club's 10th manager in 12 years, and in a squad with plenty of talent, Dembele had to compete for his spot. The coach wanted to integrate more academy players, and thus the Belgians' place wasn't secure. In his 10 starts, he was part of a midfield duo, sat under the number 10 Christian Eriksen as the aggressor of a defensive line. No central midfielders were brought in across 2015's transfer windows, and given Spurs' adequate but overall unimpressive domestic performance, typified by a League Cup final beating at the hand of Mourinho's Blues, Pochettino opted to make a change. Witnessing a year of him in training had made the Argentines certain that this unorthodox midfielder could become a key player in his system. Needing to cut down on conceding, the defensive addition of Toby Alderweireld to partner fellow compatriot Jan Vertonghen at centre-half was a solid start, which he added to by making Musa a cornerstone in the middle, recognising his aptitude at winning back possession and redistributing it with utter coolness. The difference was immediate, as Spurs became far more rigid at the back, leaking fewer goals and countering more swiftly. The young team was noticeably fitter than the rest of the league, and the Lily-Whites entered an underdogs title race with Leicester in 2016. Within reaching distance of a first ever Premier League title, the Battle of the Bridge came about in early May, a hyper-aggressive London derby between the challengers and the champions, which saw Spurs receive a record 9 bookings as a 2-0 lead was overturned by a frustrated Chelsea side who simply wanted to ruin the party. They did exactly that, as that single point left the gap between them and the Foxes too vast. As footage emerged in the game's aftermath, the FA noticed that Dembele had showcased the nasty side of his personality by attempting to eye gouge Diego Costa and slapped him with a 6-game ban. Spurs didn't allow a close shave to extinguish their spark, and the start of 16-17 was brilliant even without Musa, who stepped right back into his crucial role from mid-September, continuing to help the Londoners tick. As was the case with every member of the Tottenham contingent, the Belgians' profile was growing, earning recognition from pundits, journalists and fans alike, all of whom had now come to understand the secret genius of Spurs. With 30 just around the corner, injuries didn't come as a shock, and his ankle helped interrupt his hectic intro to a campaign in which Spurs appeared to have a second run at the title. Their defensive solidarity and excessive scoring made them tough to beat, only losing twice by February as the fight for gold became a two-horse race. Up against Antonio Conte's redefined Chelsea, a few too many draws and painful defeat at the Olympic Stadium kept them dreaming. Soon after their ultimate game at White Hart Lane, Dembele underwent surgery for his ankle, and there was a cumulative belief that he would never return to full fitness. Nonetheless, he remained one of the Argentines' irreplaceables going into his 6th Spurs season, which ironically was amongst his finest years to date. By the new year, he was undeniably the most efficient midfielder in England, achieving the highest success rate of passes and dribbles, while even more low-lying in the mid. February was a busy month for the Lily-Whites, visiting Liverpool before hosting the North London derby, and then journeying to Turin for the Champions League round of 16. Starting all 3 fixtures, Musa's power helped them to a draw at Anfield, and then was exceptional against Arsenal, whose midfield 3 couldn't cope with his strength and awareness. The highlight of his campaign though came in Italy. In his first ever UCL knockout match, he outran, outclassed and simply overwhelmed the old ladies' elite level midfield in their 2-2 draw at the Allianz. The return leg didn't go their way, but for many this proved the ilk of midfielder Tottenham possessed, and to think he's 30, it made people imagine just how valuable he'd be if 5 years younger. Without scoring a single goal, nor claiming an assist all year, the Belgian was recognised as one of Europe's finest midfield performers, underlined by his glimpses of quality in the World Cup, registering 200 minutes as Belgium battered England for 3rd place, their greatest performance ever in the tournament. All went swimmingly at the start of 18-19, continuing to enthrall the Premier League unperturbed, until a November game at Wolves' Molineux, when he sustained further and more extreme damage to an ankle ligament inside 7 minutes. The worst fear of all had been realised, and the medics knew he wouldn't step foot on a pitch for months. Aged 32, he knew this had been coming, and Dembele decided that, after 6 years and 250 appearances in North London, it was time to leave. In 2019's January window, Chinese Super League club Beijing Guan paid £11 million, giving him a relaxed and rewarding conclusion to an 18-year career, opting to retire in 2022.
Love you guys.
Whenever asked who's the best player you've played with, those who've had the privilege would drop the same name without thinking twice.
Moussa Dembele.
Dembele.
Moussa Dembele.
Moussa Dembele for me. Moussa Dembele.
I think Moussa Dembele.
Moussa Dembele.
Moussa Dembele.
He probably could have gone on and won the Ballon d'Or. That's how good he was.
Teammates, opponents, pundits and number 1 fan Pochettino would never miss a chance to praise the midfielder.
For me, I put him in next to Ronaldinho, Maradona, Okocha. He's one of the unbelievable talent in the history of football.
Described as a monster with ballerina feet, Moussa Dembele was a footballing one-off. Capable of dribbling through an entire team without breaking a sweat, he was a beautifully delicate bully with a tough edge and occasional mean streak, who couldn't be robbed of the ball.
For me, in a 5-a-side, he's the best player in the world.
Truly a player the streets won't forget. The art of dummying and feints he had down to a T, creating acres of space purely by dropping his shoulder. He could beat a marker without even touching the ball. Whether you got tight to him or stood off, he could humiliate you, specialising in inviting pressure to create space before offloading the ball at a perfect time, like a vacuum cleaner. For much of his career, he slid under the radar of most due to his reserved approach to getting forward, which impacted his stats. However, any who watched Dembele in Pochettino's team especially can appreciate his impact, and there is a belief among the team that lost the Champions League final just 5 months after his departure that if he had stayed fit, the result would have been different. There's no doubt that should he have come to Spurs in his early 20s instead of midway through them, we could be talking about a different Dembele, one who was then snatched up by a European heavyweight lifted the major prizes and became one of his generation's best. He really was that good.